Hello, everybody. Welcome. You know, even myself, with all of my unusual experience and strange friends and dreaming, non-ordinary experience, all of this, some of which is staggeringly profound, I am still, most of the time, like a regular human. Perhaps the primary difference is that my ontology, in other words, what I think is going on, does not muchly resemble that of most humans, though there are exceptions. Philosophers, religious people, insightful and curious regular folks, they may have ontologies that either have some correspondence to mine, or are quite similar, or don't conflict with it, right? So my ontology would naturally correlate with theirs, even though each side has unique features not shared by the other side. Hi. Hi.
Hi, Anna.
So, I want to talk about today about this word reality. And to begin with, I think it's important to understand that words don't have meanings. We use words to mean things to each other. If words have something resembling meanings that are intrinsic to the words without a speaker, without a context in which they are spoken, then these meanings are simply the sense, what are called the senses of the word, the enumerated senses in a dictionary. But words without a speaker and words without a recipient and words without a context are in fact meaningless. They don't possess meanings. So reality doesn't have a meaning. But commonly, when humans use this word, what they are referring to is a layer of human experience in which common expectations about identity, activity, function, ability, nature, origin, utility, if I didn't already say that, cause and effect, and so forth, are not the expectations that common humans would have, and particularly humans in cohorts they are familiar with, are not violated. So what reality means is a very strange thing. And why is it strange? Well, it's strange because it's unjustifiably normative. It both tells us what to expect and also what to dismiss, right? And when I refer to this as a layer, reality, this word, is normally used, commonly used, by people intending to indicate the layer of human perception, participation, and experience that does not violate the expectations of common, simple-minded, skeptical people. I say skeptical because this word is commonly used to dismiss features of experience, participation, identity, and so forth, that produce a mismatch with expectation. So for common people, simple-minded folks, everyday stuff, they will become quite upset if they should encounter anything that violates their strange, confused, disparaging relationship with norms. And when I say disparaging, I mean they use norms to disparage novelty and what they might call anomalies. Anomalies are things that, quote, shouldn't happen, unquote. And yet are occurring all over the world billions of times per second. So, in point of fact, quote, reality, unquote, has all kinds of features that don't fit into the expectations of common, simple-minded people who expect the expected and who dismiss anything that draws that into question or perhaps violates it. Now, most of the time when this word is used, the people using it, they think they know, quote unquote, what reality is, what's going on, what isn't going on, what can't go on, and all kinds of things. These are ridiculous assertions, but they are comforting. And they enable us to ignore or even literally not perceive anything anomalies. Now, in point of fact, anomalies are everything that's going on. How is that true? Well, firstly, no one knows what anything is. In order to understand even cause and effect, we have to limit ourselves in time and perspective to produce a simple enough template for us to subject to evaluation or analysis. And this is mostly what we do. We are scripted to, we learn the protocols that enforce concrete identity that is only slightly temporalized, right? It only modestly takes time into account, is far too localized, and produces relatively reliable predictive results. Now, in the case of Newtonian physics, the results are quite accurate. And in the case of relativity, even more so. But the little slice of reality that both of those things are concerned with are physical interactions in space over time. A close friend said that this is not well known, the original aim of relativity was to synchronize clocks across vast distances. And if that's your goal, the aspects of the real that you will perceive are extremely minimal. Modern science is largely concerned with evicting the unknown, the mysterious, the novel, and origin in order to produce small scope, highly reliable predictions about what will happen if we disturb or introduce or retract some variable. When people use the word reality commonly, again, they are referring to what they are familiar with expecting. And if you don't pay attention to novelty or anomaly, you never see it. Therefore, your worldview, your ontology, collapses more and more each time you enact this protocol until you only see the layer of experience that is the most predictably reliable, right? Things like the location of physical objects in my kitchen. Now, if we take quantum physics seriously, it implies that catastrophic novelties must occur. In other words, there will eventually be a situation in which the dropped egg recondenses after shattering into a whole egg. The problem, quote unquote, is that it would require, according to present understandings, billions of trillions of dropped eggs per second over time to occasionally produce such a result. But again, if we take that seriously, what it means is that novelty and anomaly are fundamental to the nature of the real. Even though we don't usually mean that when we use this word reality. Now, we who live in boxes that are dead inside, we who live in worlds of machines and rectangles everywhere, look around you, see how many rectangles you see if you're not outside, even if you are outside. Our cars, our chairs, our windows, our walls, our bookshelves, our books, our CDs, our screens, our smartphones, our computers, our doors, our tables, right? All of these surround us with highly regularized phenomena that lead to the regularization of expectation that evict novelty and what we think of as anomaly. In point of fact, the existence of the real is a standing wave of anomaly. No one has the slightest idea, well, not no one, very few of us have the slightest idea of what is going on. Like, why are there trees? What made eyes? We have prosaic explanations. Oh, eyes are the result of physical evolution over time. They're just, random mutations mechanically piling up on each other until you accidentally produce something useful. Notice the emphasis on usefulness. Nature is filled with beauty, and beauty can be seen from a utilitarian standpoint, but it doesn't have, its function is simply reduced to reproduction, right? Attract things to do work for you, attract things to mate with you. That is not reality. That is a restrictive template overlay on existence and experience. That overlay is highly functional. The reduction in ambiguity reduces the necessity of vigilance and produces the illusion of accurate predictability. However, when examined carefully, it turns out that the scope of those benefits is extremely limited and self-limiting. It naturally limits itself more and more over time until it seems to be the only thing that's going on. There are no anomalies. There's just the regularized world inside the rectangles of thought, reflection, conception, language, math, physics, and so on. Apparently, very few people notice this problem. And it's not surprising because the faculties with which we process experience and conception become self-limiting in any situation where their structure deprives us of input. And this is naturally the purview, what's that word? It may come to me later. I won't dwell on it now. This is naturally the purview of certain aspects of the left cortical hemisphere, which is, in a way, a developmental feature of the right hemisphere's brilliance, miraculous breadth of depth and scope and emotion and relational potential. In the same way that the fingertips are the unique in-action bodies of the will in humans. Context matters a lot, and relational context matters very deeply in terms of understanding reality. If you talk to someone who has spent a great deal of time as a brilliant expositor, often interviewed by Lex Fridman, who also went to visit him in the Amazon. I think when he got there, he was suicidal. Not surprising. Living in a world of dead inside rectangles is wildly unrewarding, even if we are quote-unquote successful in that world. The network of human minds, the cognitium, is universalized over the surface of the earth, but it differs dramatically in what it both receives and communicates to its participants, depending on where they are, but also who they are with. The man who I was speaking of, I can't recall his name, he went to the Amazon, and his understanding of reality was completely transformed by the experiences that he had with the indigenous people, the forest, the snakes, the insects, the trees and living places there. If you're embedded in a forest, you're embedded in nature's cognitia, and you are buffered and protected from the catastrophic exposure to modernity and all of its deprivations and bizarre, ridiculous suppositions about reality. Those of us who've had direct, non-ordinary experience, and often this involves deep relation with other people who are themselves fundamentally not ordinary. People with a very limited view of reality may refer to such persons as insane. They think that the actual shaman or medicine person of an indigenous tribe is simply superstitious and nuts. They don't believe in anything like magic. And even this word is highly value-laden for moderns. But the words that are used by non-moderns are not thusly value-laden. They see the world, well, we would have to ask them how they see the world, but it's clear that many of them perceive the world as fundamentally magical and physical only as an after effect, right? As sequelae from the transcendental nature of existence. So they don't see magic as a layer of the physical world. They see the physical world as an expression of what we might call magic, or non-ordinary interactions between accessible to humans arrays of intelligence in nature. If you were to leave your city and go to a place where there are actual humans who are practicing non-ordinary ways of being human, you would quickly discover that your expectations are wrong, that the world is, in fact, shot through with mystery, anomaly, transcendental intelligence. Beings and minds that are not physical and are inconceivable to those who live in boxes and a world of rectangles. And the longer you spent with them, the more you would adapt to their perspectives and orientations in relationship, particularly with nature, with organisms, plants, animals, insects, fishes, water creatures, birds, trees, living places, rivers, mountains, deserts. They do not thingify these features of our experience the way that moderns do. And thingifying them mostly obliterates our capacity to participate with them. One of my friends has a mother who lives in Canada, and he was complaining. Well, this friend is very left hemispheric in his approach to the world. And, you know, one of the common excuses is, well, I don't have any experience of any of these things you're talking about, Darren. So for me, not only can I not evaluate them, there's no evidence of them in my experience. Well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You certainly will never see what you don't go looking for, or what is evicted by your ontology. You will never see it. It will never occur. Therefore, the primacy, right, of your ontology will never be drawn into question by your experience, because your ontology limits what you can access experientially. So, you know, the whole, there's no evidence of ghosts. Well, there's plenty of evidence of ghosts all over the place. Hundreds of thousands of human experiences per hour all over the world, right? But you can dismiss that if you've never had that experience, and you will never have that experience most likely, unless you find yourself in an anomalous situation. A situation where, even given the limitations of your ontology, you have an experience that is inexplicable according to your view of what the real is. If you go out and hang out with Bedouins in the desert, the people who are probably the model of the Fremen in Dune, you will have all kinds of experiences that have nothing to do with what you think is going on today. Now, my friend. Yeah, so he was complaining that his mom likes to talk to him at length about these trees that she goes to visit. And he said to me, with great frustration, it's just a bunch of trees. Because he has no idea what trees are. For him, trees are just objects. They're like forks or knives. I mean, they happen to be alive, big deal, so what? You can't talk to them, he thinks. Of course, you can easily talk to trees with your heart and be heard and hear their replies. The breadth of the possibility space for human, what we call consciousness, is infinite. The portion of that the people who think they know what's going on can reach is infinitesimal. It's minute. They stay in the layer provided by their template that doesn't violate their expectations of normativity. Reality is infinitely mysterious and completely transcendental to human concepts. There's no part of reality that fits in human concepts. We can fit features of reality into human concepts, but most of us get this backwards and we think the concepts are complete, authoritative, tell us what things are, and are all about things. Ian McGilchrist's brilliant work in The Master and His Emissary, and also his magnum opus, The Matter with Things, details the problems with this so that thankfully I won't have to, though I can, give glosses of them. Thingification kills participation, and it's a left hemispheric, natural to the left hemisphere's way of being in the world, which doesn't like organisms. It doesn't like anything that violates its primacy, because it's terrified, actually, that this primacy will be retracted, and it thinks it will be subjected to its own form of judgment, which is impossible because the right hemisphere doesn't do that. It's not an accountant. There are no things except in the misguided and self-minimizing approach of the aspect of our minds that is dominated by left hemispheric-like character. When one travels, which I have done very little of on the surface of the earth, then one changes which features of the human and non-human cognitia that one is in participation, reception, transformation with. And thus it is that different places on the surface of the earth, the difference, for example, between a village in France and downtown San Francisco, might as well be two different planets. In fact, there are different places within San Francisco itself that might as well be different planets. So different are they. If one is surrounded by concrete structures, steel structures, that blot out the sky, and evict nature and regularize perception, this has a trenchant effect on cognition, consciousness, awareness. It determines what we will authorize and see. Similarly, if one is in the midst of the Amazon rainforest with a group of indigenous foragers, the world that will appear to you might as well be a different universe than downtown San Francisco. Humans are very similar. You can encounter humans that are tediously regularized. Their minds are rectangular. They evict novelty, mystery, transcendental features of experience and origin. All day long, they're basically buffer off anything that would violate their familiar ways of thinking and reacting and relating with experience. Those humans are like living dead people. Their body is alive, their mind is a zombie. And the infection that turned their mind into a zombie is simply representational cognition. Which isn't by itself bad, but if we're not trained to use it adeptly, it becomes astonishingly debilitating and limiting, because it takes over awareness.
What are you saying no to? You're saying no to interaction?
I thought about it.
I was looking at a Reddit, probably in Aliens this morning, and someone was wondering if there were beings that appear human but are actually alien. And it's a complex question. But yes, there probably are. There are entities of some kind walking around in appearing human that aren't. But perhaps more startlingly, there's really no such thing as human beings. Human beings are a form of space life. We come from space just like everything else. And the aspect of us that is human is minute compared to all of the aspects that are not merely human. So all of us are much, much more than human, infinitely more than human. Yet, like good, obedient humans, we are inclined to take on the limitations of our persona, character, potential, ability, urgent, originary motivations,
Conference in New York a few weeks ago.
so that we adapt and become normalized. Now, many people who are commonly minded may say things like, you're very imaginative, or you're an idealist, to me, right? You're an idealist, or you're crazy, or those people who are shamans in the Amazon are crazy, or they're just superstitious, or they're delusional. So, okay, there are delusions. McGilchrist catalogs them very effectively, fairly completely. There are hallucinations. There is such a thing as paranoia. There are hallucinations. There are people who have delusional thoughts or beliefs. All of us are those people to varying degrees. But people like Sarah Janes, the Dream Incubator, who I've interviewed, and Norman D. Ellis, who spent her life studying Egypt and hieroglyphs, or Amanda Radcliffe, the Hermetic the student of Hermeticism and mysticism, these brilliant souls, there is nothing delusional about their understanding of existence or their ontologies. In fact, so you have sort of at least two polarities. Actually, you have, myriads of polarities, but I'll focus on two, right? You have people who are hallucinating or are delusional. That's a real thing that happens to human minds, particularly when isolated or under the influence of damage to the right hemisphere or metabolic problems or so forth. So that is an aspect of human experience, but you also have people who simply have insight. And to the skeptic, these people might be dismissed as delusional, but it's actually the skeptic that's delusional in this case. The people who live and demand the primacy of their absurd expectations of normative, expectable existence. There's no greater delusion than that. And that delusion is common to people who have no brain damage, are not genetically predisposed to schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or, the vast array of disorders and unique features of humanity that are pathologized in clinical practice. So the important thing to understand here is relatively simple. Yes, there are delusions and hallucinations. And some people who propose wild ontologies are delusional. But that doesn't mean that all people who, right, there's a vast scope, a vast slice of the pie of human experiencers that are not delusional and are reliably reporting on experiences they know they themselves have had and others have had. The shaman who is true successfully cures lethal diseases without modern medicine through spiritual practices. This has been going on for tens of thousands of years. The fact that moderns don't like to believe in that is stupid, right? It's just not true. So we should be aware that there are at least two forms of delusion. The form of delusion that is enchanted, usually by a narrative, a model of what's going on, and the form of delusion that admits no novelty and refuses to concern itself with anything that, quote, doesn't exist, unquote, within the evictive, incredibly limiting frameworks of their expectation system. That second delusion is unimaginably common. It exists in almost every human person, including myself. Because you see, even though I am aware of these matters and have had what I consider to be entirely authoritative, non-ordinary experience, meaning it really happened, I exist in a context of humans whose normalization templates affect me. They drag me toward them like a kind of gravity. And over time, the power of my experiences wears off and I become normalized. Just like what happened to all of us in the transformations from infancy to childhood, to adolescence, to young adulthood, etc. Each of those transformations imposed on my expectation a more and more limited and limiting array of templates. What is actually going on is nothing like what we expect. Were we to be relieved of those disabling templates with which we've been indoctrinated and scripted, any moment of common experience would be so profoundly transcendental to anything we've ever known that we might die of ecstasy. We would certainly be ecstatically bewildered and terrified of the beauty of it at the same time. So this idea of, reality is the normal stuff, the cars and the roads and the rectangles and the boxes that's a load of bullshit. There's nothing true about that. It is impossible that is veritable, formally and conceptually. Almost all philosophers are aware of something resembling what I'm talking about here. So too are religious people, though they often establish basically just a different version of the expectation templates and the ontologies. I hope that those of you who are listening will receive this as an invitation to escape the prisoneered array of normative expectations, thoughts, conceptions, and so forth that we tend to otherwise be trapped in. And we need each other for this, right? We need encouragement, we need companionship, we need inspiration, we need positive observational emotion, we need relief from negative observation and judgment in order to open the portals to the actual nature of what's going on, which is in fact ourselves. We are what's going on. All of the strangeness, all of the beauty, all of origin, all of the transcendental is embodied and potentiated within each of us and in every organism in our world. As I've said before, we need a mission to Earth. We need a mission to understand and recover our actual natures, potentials, the possibility space of our humanity, from the strange delusion that reality is simply that which does not vary from my expectation over time. Your nature, my nature, the possibility space of our incarnation resembles nothing within our common conceptual templates. It is so far beyond them that the slightest experience of it would obliterate them forever. We, as I've said many times, are like flowers on a world with no bees, or few bees. We are like fish on a world with no swimmable water. And those are slight exaggerations, but they circle the central feature of our problem. Each of my recordings is an attempt to create the portal that we can together transit, to unsever ourselves, to reacquire the beauty and intelligence, transcendence, and ecstasy that was natural to us as children, and is the common field of play of those who are artistic and creative and playful. So grateful, not for that, so grateful to have this time to explore and remember and inspire each other. I wish you every beautiful way of growth and healing, love, anamnesis, and joy. I wish you beautiful dreams and amazing relationships. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again very soon. Bye-bye for now.